I just want to say thank you. Everybody hear me okay? Because I hate standing on the podium. But I want to say thank you, Pat. It's really hard to follow some of the people. You know, amazing story. We've done research into your story for so many years. And it's very difficult. It's humbling to stand here today and hear your stories, and I'm standing back at the table going, I don't know what to say, because our story is nowhere close to your story. But the thing I want to impress upon you is your legacy, as you've talked about it so many times over the past few days, it's not dead. We are keeping it alive. Just like Mike said, he's keeping it alive through his ventures. We hope we're keeping it alive, and not only are we keeping it alive, we're charging it. We're exploding it, and we're going to talk to you through the next 20 or 30 minutes about some of the impacts that your combat operations and how you operate and how you conducted yourself in Vietnam 50 years ago, how it still has second, third, fourth order effects and continues to resonate not only on the battlefield, but in the financial realms and how we're saving money and how we're conducting business throughout things like reform of our acquisition process. All of those things has your DNA all over it. So it's amazing to me that such a small group of people can have such a massive impact 50 years in the making. So thank you again for having me here. Let's knock it on. So before I get too far into it, I want to talk about basically 4 different things. We'll talk about the history of where we came from, where the vision came from. We'll talk about the aircraft. We'll go into some specifics. I got some great slides that will show the details of how we developed a lot of aircraft modifications, some of the weapons. We'll talk about some of the vignettes of when we went over to Iraq and fought the ISIS members. And then we'll talk about where we're going in the future and where I think personally this is taken. We're going to go politically, even though it's still lined with political landmines. So the program, as it was designed from my inception and my vision, was we're going to take the properly trained people, we're going to couple them with a properly purpose-built aircraft, fly them to a faraway land, and let them fight the enemy. If it sounds familiar, it should, because that's exactly the tenets that I took away from you in the mission set that you conducted in Vietnam, and we just used that same, just carbon copied it 50 years later. So we're going to talk through that today. Before I get any further, I'd like to introduce a couple of the people that are here specific to the program. Hey Joe, if you could stand up. Hey Joe, Dave Parsons from NavAir Syscom. He was kind of our... Joe is basically the mayor of everything NavAir Syscom. If you need something done, Joe is a go-to man, and he certainly helped us navigate through all of the core competencies at NavAir. Thanks for being here, Joe. The next guy sitting right next to him, Eric Huppert. He's the Air Force guy in the room. So please don't hold that against him. Eric. Eric has a lot of experience in the OV-10, retired Air Force. He flew the OV-10 in the Air Force, and then he flew it for State Department down in South America, correct? And then he taught me to fly the OV-10. Thanks for being here. Next, I'll hold on to the next one. John Moore, if you could stand up. Retired Captain Andy Walt. Long time Andy saved my life in so many different ways. Even telling some things that I shouldn't be telling, but somehow in a country where we shouldn't have alcohol, somehow when I was so stressed out and carrying the load and the burden, he found a bottle of scotch. And I've been a long time friend of mine for almost 25 years now. So it's we've flown things and have conducted missions in this airplane that I never thought possible. It does me great honor sometimes to know that the Navy gets it right. The next guy I'd like to introduce, it's humbling, again, to have led this man into battle and have put him through so many times, but then also to see how he carried us. He's newest strike fighter commanding officer, who was recently selected to be a commanding officer, Lieutenant Commander Dan Bam Young. Thanks for carrying the torch. I also obviously can't leave Lori out. Love my life, Lori, if you can stand up, I gotta just acknowledge that you're here. It's good. I know people all understand. I tell people all the time, I did not realize how stressed out I had to become until I left the Navy, and then there she was. Life has been so amazing in the past 3 years since I've met her, so thank you for being here. Okay, let's get on to it. So, You know me, I started out flying F-18s. I flew F-18s for about 10 years. Loved the program, loved flying it, loved being a fighter pilot. I was a top gun instructor. I walked the walk. I thought I was everything that there could be in life. But I realized some years later, after 9/11, and I joined the SEAL teams working for Navy Special Warfare Development Group, that I didn't know a whole lot about life. In the fighter community, they kind of kept us with blinders on and kept us away from acquisition, kept us away from the real world. When I joined the SEAL team and we started fighting the fight with them, next thing I knew is I found myself carrying a gun, fast roping out of the little birds, doing all kinds of crazy things that I never thought I would do. And then this one, from 25,000 feet, jumping out of an airplane into a night hey-ho infill, just the things that I was doing, and John Boy was right there with me, it really opened my aperture wide into what the rest of the world was like. That allowed me to go through and start thinking about things like, where are we going with the Navy Special Warfare groups and all of the Special Operations teams? Where are we taking it? I'm not a SEAL, and I never professed to be a SEAL, even though I did a lot of the same things that they were doing. But I started saying, well, how can I help the mission? How can I help the cause? Especially being an aviator that is not that knows that I'm not a SEAL for some reason. I've got a malfunction here. One of the things that I quickly started noticing back in 1979, everybody probably remembers the Iranian hostage crisis and how that whole thing went down and how it eventually failed with the hostage rescue mission. And then out of that came a new direction to build synergy amongst the Special Operations teams. The one thing that they missed when they built that synergy and they put all the Special Operations teams under one parent command was they forgot to give them some strike fighter capability. Not necessarily the fighter, but the strike capability. So I started delving into this theory of what do we need to do to realign inside Air Force Special Operations Command. As a Navy guy, how can I force that paradigm? One of the tenets that I built from that was it's very expensive to conduct business the way we conduct business today. If you look at the numbers there on the board, $19,000 per flight hour every time you fly 1 hour in an F-18 Charlie. If you want to compare that to some of the more later and greater F-22 numbers, $68,000 a flight hour. So you can quickly see how just talking finances alone and how that will quickly break our country bank. General Mattis, or Secretary of Defense Mattis, not too much longer, God bless him, he's such a great American, I've followed that guy into the pit of hell. He is always saying, I cannot continue to conduct business this way because the terrorists are winning this war because they're breaking our country. So when we put our program together, and then we briefed General Mattis when he was at JIFCOM, he came back and said, this fits nicely into my scheme of maneuver of how I see us growing this program and financially helping the country and also helping me fight because I believe my Marines need this type of capability. We need to bring it back. We've learned the lessons from Vietnam. Let's make sure we find a way to bring it back. We did fly the Imminent Fury program, as you guys may or may not know. We flew the A-29 for about 800 hours, and we were plumbed. We had aircraft ready to go, and we were about ready to deploy, and then Senator Steve Brownback from Kansas killed that due to an ongoing light attack initiative that was to buy aircraft for the Iraqi rebuild and the Afghanistan rebuild. So that whole program went away. But about 5 months later, I was back into the guns and jumping out of airplanes, and about 5 months later, General Mattis, now who's taken over the combatant command at Central Command, the COCOM, he sent his executive assistant down to find me and said, if you can find an airplane that is not politically charged, I will go before Congress and the President, and I'll find you money to bring back the light attack initiative. We have to keep the system pressurized because it's the right thing to do. In doing that, we started realizing that there were a bunch of questions that we then need to answer internally to our small group of people. And I'm talking small, maybe 4 or 5 people at best, inside the trusted agent realm. These were some of the questions that we came up with that we really thought were the strong points behind the argument of why we needed to re-energize the light attack program. The top one there is probably the primary focus of everything that we do. The people that are sitting at my table, especially Bam Bam, who's about to take over operational command. The top bullet is probably the nearest and dearest to his heart, and if it's not, it certainly will be soon. When you look at the operational full mission capable status across the Navy and Marine Corps, it is embarrassing low, to the point of, Bam Bam, I won't put you on the spot, but I will say it's probably the point of 35 to 40% FMC rate across the board. Wow. If you think about a near-peer competitor like China or North Korea who decides to step up to the plate, and want to punch us in the face, right now, I don't believe we have the ability to fight back. Or we're going to lose a lot of people in the transition, right? So I'm not saying that we don't need our 4th and 5th generation fighters. We certainly do need the frontline defense. In your time in Vietnam, you needed the same type of air superiority, air dominance, rollback, suppression of enemy air defenses, all of those, killing the MiGs, all of those things have to take place, but at what cost? Right now, because of 9/11, we got into a war, the enemy had a vote, and we didn't realize we were going to be in an extended, protracted counterterrorism, chasing terrorists all over the world. But because of that 15, 20-year ongoing, and probably long since after even I'm gone, I believe it's what's going to be our most detrimental piece to our whole schema as a military, because we're seeing it in our 4th and 5th generation fighters. So what we did is we went and looked and said, if we can find some way to build an aircraft or bring an aircraft back into existence that can do the same job or be more effective, because we'll purpose build the aircraft for this counterterrorism coin environment, and we can do it for fractions or pennies on the dollar, I think we can probably turn some heads and maybe get some support throughout Congress all the way up to the president, one would think. Unfortunately, as you know, McNamara, I believe, was the one that wanted to take away the props. Is that correct? Yeah, wanted to take away the props and bring jets online. Everything was going to be jet driven. I can't tell you how many times I've sat in the halls of the Pentagon or around DC and in Congress, and I hear people say, if you fly this airplane in combat, you will get shot down. Well, what they don't understand, and General McChrystal tells a really good story of how the hundreds of thousands of manned aircraft that fly every day around the world in support of the special operations missions are prop-driven. The difference being they're commercial derivatives, Super King Airs, PC-12s, aircraft such as that. They are not designed to go into combat. Another tenet that we came up with was we don't want to take a commercial derivative. We want to do something that is purpose-built, so if we do get shot at, we can have at least a fighting chance. They're going to shoot at us, we want to be able to shoot back, kind of thing. Why go into a bar fight with your hands tied behind your back? So we really started going to school on building or answering all these questions, and we would have sessions that would go till 3 or 4 in the morning through video teleconferencing. We were trying to figure out, let's ask ourselves every question that we can think of that they may possibly ask us, and let's answer it first. So when we go into these congressional meetings, we'll be able to answer, and it was interesting how it turned out. We came up with our soft light attack concept of operations. It was pretty simple and pretty straightforward, and we took, Kid Lavelle, is Kid here? No. So we took that book, and it kind of became our Bible. Not to be sacrilegious, but it kind of became our Bible. We did all the research, like I said earlier, and we made it our mission to, one, not let your legacy down. We want to make sure we're going to uphold Black Pony's legacy, but we wanted to make sure we were going to do it right. We know that this is critical to the country. We know this is critical to our military infrastructure. We really took it hard. We had a lot of passion. We lost a lot of sleep over the next 6 or 7 years. But we believe we need to put the right people in place. We knew we had to make it low cost. Focused on the ground effort. We needed an open architecture system, and I'll get into some of these slides here in a second. I'm Southern Baptist, so if I start to ramble, someone say amen. Lori is back there telling me when it's time to stop talking, so if I get long-winded, please let me know. The open architecture systems in the airplane that we put in allowed us to be able to go through real-time technology changes in the field. General McChrystal is also fond of saying technology refreshes at a rate of about every 4 to 6 months we see a technology refresh. The special operations community has to be able to answer that call and beat that 4 to 6 month technology refresh, or they become inviolable. They're no longer a viable fighting force. We try to apply that mentality with an open architecture system. So you talk about your computer systems, the cell phones, all the things that we have in technology today. We try to apply it to our architecture of the aircraft. Weapon systems are pretty basic, as you're going to see in a second, but all of the things that we added on from the top secret and secret mission systems are on board. Everything was an open architecture, very easy to change. Where you take an F-18, for example, if you change one system, you may have several million lines of code that you have to do regress testing on just to make sure when you flip a switch to turn on a light, it doesn't accidentally fire a rocket or lower the landing gear or dump your fuel or whatever the case may be. We went around that. We circumvented a lot of the NAVAIR requirements that they were going to impose upon us by making an open architecture system. We developed a whole host of mission systems, weapons, and a whole new slew of tactics and capabilities, but it still has your DNA all over it. So again, we're going to show you that here in a second. That's crazy. I've been given this brief, and I've used this slide for so many years now, and I met Jeff earlier today. Where are you, Jeff? Are you here someplace? I was briefing and giving the Secretary of the Navy a flight in the back of an airplane, and I told the story, and your slide was up there. I used it as the preamble and entry into the story, and I told the whole story, and he's like, I'm Secretary of the Navy, I never even knew this program existed. How do I get that into today's world? So again, I don't want me to put you on the spot. I've been using your story for so many years, as I have been the entire Black Ponies, but this slide's been in here forever, so I had to keep it in because it's great to meet you. So, okay, so I also, when you start talking about Boyd, he talks about getting the right people, the right equipment, the right ideas. So you had to put them in that order. So we went back and we started saying, okay, they have the right people. Again, reading the book and talking about how you all guys came together. We did the same thing. Vice Admiral Fox, who's recently retired, he was the deputy for U.S. Central Command under General Mattis. He was my direct superior. I didn't have anybody between me and the Vice Admiral, so it was nice to have that kind of top cover. And he said, look, go and pick your team, and then come to me with your list of guys, and I'll go to the admin folks over in Millington, and we'll figure out a way to get them to you. This is the group that we ended up with. This is where we started out. This is kind of early on, and I'll tell you, just like any other JOs, and it's funny that I hear listening to all the stories for the past couple of days, that we have our fair share of funny JOs. Graham, stand up again. This guy can grow a beard by tomorrow. It's amazing. It's like a cheat, right? Always, also just crazy junior officers, and we've all been there. The officers obviously understand how this works. He lost a bet, had to fly without a shirt one day. My senior enlisted advisor came in, and he was being kind of crazy, and I didn't know what was going on. He's like, "Sir, I had to tell you, I don't want you to get mad, but Commander Cunningham is flying without a shirt today." He'd already launched, I didn't know anything about it, but it's a great story, and they've taken the picture, and I finally got a hold of the picture, but, and this is our surfer dude. He didn't shower for, what, 2 months? So, great stories. I wish that they could be here. We love, I'm so just in awe of everything that you've done. I wish these guys could be here. But we also had a great enlisted crew as well. The Lorax, he's a defender of the trees. This is our only Air Force guy that we had on the team. He was our ordnance loader. He knew a lot about the Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System. That's why we brought him in. The Navy didn't at the time have a SME on that weapon system. So he came in, and when I told him that he could grow a beard, he came to me sheepishly one day and said, "Hey, everybody's growing beards." He said, "Okay, if I grow a beard, like, man, knock yourself out." And he grew one of the most phenomenal, I think rats were living inside there by now. Amazing young man, and he is about to start working for me. I just hired him on after he retired from the Air Force as well. As at the end of the day, when you talk about personnel and the people that we hired, a small group, we stayed together for most of the time. There were a few people that had to leave in the middle, but this is about just a few weeks before we were leaving Iraq on our way home. Again, I say the things that you accomplished in your time in Vietnam, we were nowhere close to that. But I think it is such a great feeling inside to know that we were part of your legacy. I hope that everything that we're talking about here tonight will dispel some of the, maybe if there was hate or discontent or confusion, that we were using your call sign, I have your tattoo even on my shoulder. It's a lot, I lost a bet. I hope that you can take away from this today some recharged and energized, not that you needed it by the looks of everything that I've seen in the past 2 days, sense of pride and ownership in everything that we've done. These gentlemen conducted themselves very professionally in combat. We did kill a lot of ISIS, and we'll talk about that here in a second, but a great group of men. I gotta show a bang. I don't think the audio is not playing. Let me turn it up real quick. Yeah, unfortunately the audio is not playing, but it's just a bit flyby. I wanted you to hear the engine squeak to probably bring back a lot of great memories for you. But that was Bam Bam. He was at about 10 feet, and I promise that won't show up as you're changing Bam Bam. If you could, yeah, if you could just unplug and plug. You can always remember the sound of that airplane. So after the people, we had to find an airplane. As General Mattis had directed, we needed to find something that was not politically charged, that had no congressmen that were going to crawl inside of them and create a lot of havoc. We knew the OV-10s were already at NASA. Just a few days later, after we started this initiative, I was standing before the director of NASA, giving them a classified read-in and programming what we were trying to do, who we were, and why we were not going to take the NASA airplanes. We would strip every NASA logo off of this because they only take people and take them to the moon. They don't kill bad guys. He was really worried about that. But once we convinced him that we were going to be rest assured that this was not going to be tied back to NASA in any way, he let us take 2 of his airplanes. So then we built the aircraft over and started. Try it again. Would you mind? Let me question some of the things that we did to the aircraft to bring it up to speed for the fight in Iraq. I'll go through these individually around the airplane, but just quickly we'll review. The AAR-47 missile alert warning system gives us the ability, if someone hits the missile, that you don't see the one that's going to kill you, right? So in this case, we knew that we would be flying in altitudes where the man pads could get us. The generals and admirals were all real worried that we were going to show up in orange jumpsuits on CNN getting our heads cut off. So I did went to great lengths to make sure that our aircraft was going to be integrated with all the latest and greatest systems. But if you can think about, my mentality was if a helicopter can fly in these AOs, I want to put the same systems that they fly so that we can operate in the same altitudes. Obviously not quite as low, but same mentality. So the AAR-47 was the first system, coupled with the ALE-47. I don't think, didn't get those until the Marines put them on, right? Yeah, we didn't have those in Vietnam at all. No. Yeah. So the AR-47, the ALE-47 coupled together could do some magic work for us. Like I said, the missile alert warning system would I'll show you the system in a second on the airplane. It would identify a missile has been launched just off the heat plant. Once it identifies the missile, it can do some calculation, identify what type of missile has been shot, send that information down to the ALE-47 chaff flare dispense system and tell it what to dispense. So an amazing piece of kit. I got some great video of that here in a second. NVIS compatible. We flew, I would bet 98% or so of our missions. I flew in the daytime twice in Iraq. So most of our missions, just like yours, were at nighttime. The difference though is we fly with NVGs. I got to the point where I didn't drive home sometime at night without NVGs. I can't believe you were doing missions that low to the ground without night. Covert lighting all the way around so we could turn and go completely black, and the guys we're working with, we could see each other through our NVGs, but they couldn't see us, the bad guys couldn't see us. 6 radios. How many radios did you guys have?
2. 3.
2, 3. So 2, 3? Yeah. 6 radios. They say what, 3 is too many, 4 is not enough, or 4 is, however it is, 6 is way too many. With technology the way that it is though, we used a lot of radios for SAC communications, some were doing data communications and transmissions. So at any one time, we're probably only using maybe 2 or 3 radios at best. We had Link 16. Link 16, you kind of think of it as a way to, if everyone in this room had a Link 16 system and then we spread out across Pensacola, we could all network together and I could always see where you are at all times. It's a lot like a Halo game or one of your video games that the kids are playing these days. It allows us real time to see all the other fighters, to see all the other strikers, and now we're integrating it into the ground players. Think about the story that was told earlier, 30 meters, 30 yards or so apart from the friendlies to the bad guys. If you always know where the friendlies are, it makes it pretty easy to know where the bad guys are. Doesn't mean they're definitely bad guys, but it kind of narrows down the game a little bit. So Link 16 is that kind of system we integrated in to the aircraft. Updated weapon suite, which we'll talk about here in a second. Full glass cockpit, 3 mission computers, We didn't get to the top secret world much. We had the capability to go there with all of our signals intelligence payload that we put on. But our computer system could go through a high bandwidth network across the satellites. So we could, in fact, it was pretty interesting with Vice Admiral Fox being there and General Mattis. Those two gentlemen watched our strikes quite regularly, but also the president could sit in his PIOC center and watch the strikes coming right from the aircraft. So pretty interesting capability. We didn't like it though, because a lot of times it also gave the ground force commander the ability, even though we were detached 8,000 miles away, my boss could call us real time and chew us out if that was what was needed. And the full ISR payload, as we talked about earlier. This is the way we went through a lot of different design modifications to the cockpit, and the front and back went through several different iterations. But this is what we finalized with. I'll just kind of quickly talk. That is just a simple Garmin system. If you have any aviators that fly in the glass cockpits today, the Garmin system is our nav suite. It's pretty simple. Type in lat long, type in coordinate, flight GPS approaches, your ILS, everything you can possibly think of, packed into a very small glass system. We upgraded. That is not an upgrade that we did. That was one that was conducted by Marsh. And then this is the front cockpit mission computer screen. Anything that JB or John Boy would show in the back or could display in the back, he could push to me in the front. SIGINT capability of there's one or two systems that I could not see, but that is how I saw everything in the front. But where the magic really happened for most of our missions was in the back seat. It's a little bit difficult picture, but if you remember how your back seat looked, you had a lot of visibility on the sides. We took all that away and we put a big, huge 24-inch, what the Wizzo is actually called the Jumbotron. It was for a very specific reason, which I'm going to show to you here in a second. And then if you see looking around at the top, these were 4 of our radio controllers. A backup nav instrument. That was these were the 2 nav instruments that he had in the back in case he needed to fly us home, and then a slide-out keyboard. The slide-out keyboard was probably used in the back seat more than we even imagined when we thought of this concept, because most of the communications in the SIGINT world is done off of a more of a texting type mindset, which we call MERC. So that's the back seat and how we designed it. John Boyd, what's packed?
It's a big screen TV for a guy with no eyeballs in one.
So the way that we developed the baseline mission systems that we integrated everything into was through a program called Poseidon. Think of Poseidon as 5 or 6 different windows off of your computer that you can open up at once and put them where you want. You can arrange them how you need to, and then you can add whatever you need to those individual displays. As you look around the displays here, this is just an imagery of someplace. I'm not exactly sure where we took this photo. Another staple of imagery. Here is a chart or a moving map. All of this is geo-rectified to the aircraft's position. Also on here, you see the red dot with the circle around it, and then another green one here. Those are systems on the aircraft that are looking at those particular points on the ground. So if you take the story that we heard earlier, we check in with you and say, hey, here we are. We're here to support, looking for tasking. If you give me your grid coordinate, I can type that grid coordinate in, or John would type it in on the keyboard, type it into this area here, and then you would populate somewhere on the map. And if I decide to kick a key and slew my camera to you, I can see your precise